The moment my father clinked his glass and said, "To our daughter, the real professional," I felt every eye in that room slide from my sister to me. Not with pity, with embarrassment. The kind you feel on someone else's behalf when they don't seem to feel it themselves. I kept my hands in my lap. I smiled at the tablecloth. My boyfriend squeezed my knee under the table, and across the room, my future brother-in-law's father, a man I'd never met before that night, went completely still. That was 8 months ago. And I still think about the silence that followed. I should back up. I grew up in a house in Oakville, Ontario, where success had a very specific shape. My father is a partner at a downtown Toronto firm, corporate litigation, the kind that has its name on the building. My mother spent 20 years as a family court judge before she retired to sit on charity boards and host dinner parties where the wine costs more than my weekly groceries. My older sister followed the path they'd built, law school at Western, articled at my father's firm, made junior partner before 30. She is, by every measure my parents understand, exactly what they wanted. I became a plumber, not by accident, not by failure. I chose it. I did 2 years at George Brown, got my apprenticeship with a commercial outfit in Mississauga, and by the time I was 27, I had my Red Seal certification and was running my own crew on new builds across the GTA. I liked the work. I liked that something was broken when I arrived and fixed when I left. I liked that it was honest in a way I couldn't quite explain to people who'd never done it. My parents did not like it. "You could still go back," my mother said. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every time I came home. What she meant was, you could still become someone recognizable. Someone I can describe at the golf club without lowering my voice. My father was less subtle. He stopped asking about my work around the time I turned 25. After that, he'd just nod when my name came up. The way you nod about weather. Acknowledged. Not interesting. I stopped letting it hurt me mostly. You build a callus over that kind of thing. You have to. Then I met Hugh. I met him at a hardware supply trade show of all places, one of those enormous convention halls in Mississauga that smells like sawdust and bad coffee. He was at a booth for a sustainable insulation company, wearing a flannel shirt with the sleeves pushed up and arguing very calmly with the rep about thermal resistance ratings. I'd been walking past and stopped because the argument was actually interesting. "He's right, by the way," I said without thinking. "The R value drop in humid climates is significant." He looked at me like I'd said something genuinely surprising. Then he smiled. We talked for 40 minutes. Missed the session I'd come for. Exchanged numbers at the end because we were both going to the same supplier the following Tuesday. Hugh was a few years older than me, 32 at the time. He was soft-spoken and precise, the kind of person who notices details. He grew up in BC, moved to Ontario for work, lived in a small place in the west end of the city he was slowly renovating himself. On weekends, he drove out past Guelph to help his uncle run the family property, a large tract of agricultural land the family had held for 3 generations. "So you're a farmer," I said on our third date. "Among other things," he said. I didn't push it. Hugh was private in that careful way that isn't secretive, more like he'd learned not to lead with certain things because people reacted before they understood. I respected that. I do the same thing when someone asks what I do, and I can tell from their face they're already forming an opinion. We'd been together about a year when my sister got engaged. Her fiancé, I'll call him by what we all called him, which was just his last name, Whitmore, because even his own family did that, was the kind of man my parents had been quietly hoping one of their daughters would find. Old family money, private school, Bay Street. He was fine. Actually fine, not passive-aggressive fine. He was thoughtful and genuinely seemed to adore my sister, which mattered to me more than the rest of it. His parents were flying in from Vancouver Island for the engagement dinner. His father, Mr. Whitmore Sr., ran some kind of investment management company. I didn't know much more than that. I hadn't looked them up. It's not something I think to do. The dinner was at my parents' house, 40 guests, the good china, the caterer my mother used for her charity events. My mother had been planning it for 3 weeks and called me 4 times about what I was planning to wear. I wore a dress, navy blue. I thought I looked nice. Hugh wore a suit he'd had for years that fit him well. He looked quietly distinguished in a way my father would not notice because my father only saw the profession. I had made the mistake, 2 weeks before the dinner, of telling my mother that Hugh was coming. Of course he's coming, she said, but what does he do again? I need to know how to introduce him. He works in sustainable development and agriculture. Silence. So he's a farmer, among other things, I said, echoing Hugh's own words. Right, my mother said. And I heard it. That particular flatness that meant she'd already filed him somewhere and didn't plan to revisit it. The dinner started well enough. The Whitmores were warm, gracious people. Mr. Frykop, Whitmore Sr., Charles, he insisted, though I kept forgetting, was a large, quiet man with an easy laugh who seemed genuinely unimpressed by his own wealth in the way that only the very secure can afford to be. His wife was sharp and funny, and within 20 minutes had learned every guest's name. I liked them immediately. Hugh and Charles ended up near each other during cocktail hour. I was across the room talking to my sister, but I could see them from where I stood. They were talking, animatedly. Charles had a hand on Hugh's arm at one point, a gesture of recognition, but I couldn't hear anything over the noise, and my sister was telling me something about the venue for the wedding, and I let it go. Dinner was seated. I was between Hugh and a cousin of Whitmore's who worked in finance and spent most of the meal explaining index funds to me. Hugh was quiet but pleasant. My father, at the head of the table, was in a very good mood, the kind that comes from having things go according to plan. The toast began after the main course. My father stood first. That's how it always was. His house, his occasion, his right to speak first and longest. He was charming, I'll give him that. He talked about my sister, her work ethic, her accomplishments, her trajectory. He talked about Whitmore as though he'd personally approved the match, which in his mind he probably had. He raised his glass, and everyone raised theirs, and my sister cried a little. And it was genuinely nice. Then my father looked down the table. At me! And he said, and I remember this with the precision of something I've replayed too many times, and we're glad the whole family could be here tonight, even the ones who took a different path. He smiled. The kind of smile that has teeth in it. Still fixing pipes, sweetheart. Laughter from a few people. Polite, uncomfortable laughter. And this must be the farmer, my father said, gesturing toward Hugh with his glass. Not unkindly. That was the worst part. He thought he was being charming. He thought this was gentle ribbing. He had no idea how it landed. Hugh said, "That's right," pleasantly. Didn't flinch. I kept my hands in my lap. I looked at the tablecloth. I felt 38 years old in the worst possible way. And then Charles Whitmore, from his seat beside my mother, set down his wine glass. He set it down very carefully, the way you do when you need your hands free to think. He looked at Hugh. Looked at him properly, the way you look at someone you're trying to place. "I'm sorry," he said. "Excuse me, what's your surname?" Hugh told him, and Charles Whitmore went completely still. The table didn't notice right away. Conversation kept going in pockets. My cousin-in-law was saying something about interest rates. My mother was refilling someone's water. But I noticed. My sister noticed. Whitmore Jr. noticed. Charles leaned slightly forward. "Are you—" this is going to sound strange. "Are you the Hugh who co-developed the watershed conservation framework for the Bruce Peninsula Land Trust? The one that went to the Provincial Roundtable in 2021? The table got quieter. Hugh said, "Yes." Charles sat back in his chair. He laughed once, short and disbelieving. "I have been trying to get in front of you for 2 years," he said. "We've been trying to replicate your land management model for 3 properties in the Okanagan. Our environmental consultants have been using your methodology as the benchmark. I thought you were based in BC. "I grew up there," Hugh said. "I've been in Ontario for a while now. The watershed work alone. We're talking about a model that other provinces are adopting. Alberta just announced." Charles stopped himself, looked around the table, looked at my father. "Do you know what this man has built?" My father said nothing. "He's a farmer," my mother said carefully. still trying to understand what register this was happening in. He's one of the most significant agricultural and environmental innovators working in Canada right now, Charles said, not unkindly, very matter-of-factly, the way someone corrects a math error. His land trust work has protected over 40,000 acres. He's testified before the Senate Standing Committee on Agriculture. The framework he developed is being taught at Guelph. The table was quiet. My father looked at Hugh. Hugh looked back at him with no expression I could read. Not triumphant, not cold, just present, waiting. I didn't know, my father said finally. He said it to the room, or to no one, or to himself. No, I said quietly from my end of the table. You didn't ask. I want to be careful about what happened after, because it would be easy to tell this as a simple story about karma, and I don't think that's entirely honest. The dinner ended without drama. Charles spent the rest of the evening talking to Hugh about the Okanagan properties, and they exchanged numbers before the night was over. My father shook Hugh's hand when we left, a longer, more serious handshake than he'd given him when we arrived. He didn't say anything. I didn't expect him to, not that night. The drive home was quiet in the way that means both people are processing. You never told them, I said. You never asked me not to, Hugh said. I didn't know the full scope of it. No, he said. I know, that's not why I didn't tell you. I've spent a lot of my life having people's opinions of me change when they hear a certain thing. I wanted you to form one first. He paused. I'm glad you did. I thought about that for a long time. The thing is, and this is the part that's harder to explain, I wasn't angry at Hugh for not telling me. I understood it in my bones. I had spent my entire adult life having people decide what I was worth before they knew me, based on a word. Plumber. I watched faces close. I watched people recalibrate. I knew the particular exhaustion of waiting to see which version of you someone was going to decide you were. Hugh had waited to see who I was. I had done the same for him. It was the first relationship I'd ever had that felt like that. My anger, and I did have anger, was at something else. My father called 2 days later. That surprised me. He usually let things settle for weeks. I want to talk, he said. Can you come for dinner? I went. Hugh did not come, which was intentional, not punitive, just considered. This conversation needed to happen without the new information in the room. My father had to be willing to have it about me, not about who my boyfriend turned out to be. We sat in his study. He had scotch. I had the same. We'd done this before, for different conversations, and the ritual of it helped. I've been thinking, he said, about what you said. Which part? You didn't ask. He turned the glass in his hands. You're right that I didn't. I realize I haven't asked about your work in, I don't know how long. It's been a long time. I waited. I think, he said, and I could hear how much it cost him, that I made a decision about what your life was going to look like a long time ago. And when you made a different decision, I didn't know what to do with that. So I just set it aside. You set me aside, I said. Yes. He didn't deflect. That also surprised me. I did. That was wrong. I looked at my father, really looked at him, not the lawyer, not the dinner party host, not the man with the cutting remarks, just him. He was 63 years old and he looked tired in a way I hadn't noticed before. I need you to understand something, I said. The apology means more if it's about me, not because Hugh turned out to be someone you recognize. I know. I need to hear that you know. He was quiet for a long time. You built something, he said. I know that. You run a crew of 7 people. Your mother mentioned she looked into it after the dinner. Your company has a contract with 2 of the new hospital builds in Peel region. He looked at me. I didn't know that either. You didn't ask, I said again. Gentler this time. No, I didn't ask. We sat with that. My mother was harder. My mother is always harder. She processes through action. She looked up my company, organized a lunch, invited the right people to meet me properly. It was her version of repair, and I accepted it as such, even when it made me want to scream. She said at the lunch, "I think I was afraid that if I was too interested in your path, it meant we'd failed." I said, "You need to work on that with someone, not with me." She did not love hearing that. She is working on it. We have a Thursday phone call now that is unrelated to any occasion or obligation. That's something. My sister called me the night after the engagement dinner and talked for an hour. Mostly to say she was sorry she hadn't said anything in the room, and that she'd wanted to but hadn't known how. I told her I understood. I do understand. She grew up in the same house I did, learning the same things about what mattered. She's been unlearning them too in her own way, with more grace than I've given her credit for. Charles Whitmore has become, unexpectedly, a fixture in my life. He and his wife have come to dinner twice now. He treats Hugh with the kind of uncomplicated respect that should have always been available to him, and that I realize I never took for granted because I'd never seen it offered cleanly before. Hugh and I still live separately, though we've started talking about what it would look like to change that. He is patient about everything in a way that I am only sometimes. I am practical in a way that he says is one of his favorite things about me, which still surprises me every time because practical was always the word my family used as a consolation prize. What I know now, what I knew already but know more deeply, is that the moment at the dinner table wasn't about Hugh's credentials reversing my parents' opinion of me. It wasn't a power shift. It was a rip in the fabric of a story my family had been telling themselves for years, the story where I was the one who hadn't quite made it. And once something rips like that, you can see through it. They saw through it. What was on the other side was just me. Exactly as I'd always been. Doing work I'm proud of, with someone I love, and a life I chose with both eyes open. That should have been enough from the beginning. It's enough now.